PRS Silver Sky still a good buy in 2025? You might be asking yourself this question right now. I was earlier this year before I purchased it, and I have some thoughts. So we're going to talk about it today in this video. But before we do that, let's dive in and see what it sounds like. I was 11 or 12 years old when I got my first electric guitar. That was a Fender Strat made in Mexico, HSS. And it was great. Like, it honestly transformed my playing because I started on acoustic guitar and it was my first electric guitar. I learned and cut my teeth on that guitar. However, I didn't hold on to the guitar very long because I was into metal. And that wasn't really, doing it for me. And so I eventually moved on to a whole bunch of other guitars. And over the last, honestly, 15 years since then, I've owned a whole bunch of different guitars in that time. And so it's been a while, actually, since I have owned a Strat style guitar. I went through a few iterations of Strat style guitars over the years, including Strats themselves, or kind of a lot of like parts casted kind of Strats, in one way, shape, or form, and even some kit builds as well. But it's been a good few years since I have personally owned one. And so this year I decided I wanted to add some single coil spank into the mix again. And so of course then I went down this long journey of kind of deciding what I wanted. And so of course I've been a big fan of Paul Reed Smith for a long time. I've recommended hundreds of my students down the PRS kind of route. I've owned a whole bunch of PRSs myself. And so it seemed like a good way to go. My one worry, that as I have pretty stocky fingers, was that the neck profile itself, being a more vintage style neck, it's pretty hefty in the hand, and the radius, especially on the American made, which is a lot more curved, I worried it would be more of an issue. And so I did take some time to research it. I got a chance to, when I was over in Nashville, I got to play both the American and the SE, and the SE actually did end up feeling significantly more comfortable in my hand. Now, we're gonna start with some of the frustrations that I've had with this guitar, because there are definitely several. And there's plenty of things that I like. And it actually, I will say this, it has grown on me. But I did buy this guitar on Reverb, so bear that in mind as well. And it was out of the box a disappointment. Whether it was the seller or, I just got a dud, I don't know. But some things that you might find, as I've had now a number of people that are also owners of the SE version have complained about to me as well. So I know it is not just a one specific dud issue. The fretwork. I'm used to playing fairly well buffed out and filed and crowned frets, and this was not the case at all. Especially on the basically first 5 frets, it was razor sharp and continued basically all the way up and down the neck, almost to a point where I just didn't want to play it. And that was kind of my first red flag right off the bat, as obviously it's time consuming to, buff out frets. And I would have liked it to play a little bit better right out of the box. And I'm used to buying, somewhat used guitars having issues like that. So it wasn't a big deal, but in addition to that, there were major setup issues on the bridge that I had to kind of reset up and get it into playing shape. And to add to that, on top of all of that, the guitar just wouldn't hold tune for the longest amount of time. You know, I tried, even the first couple days that I bought the guitar, I tried 3 or 4 different sets of strings on it, and it just wouldn't hold tune. So I figured it was just that. You know, I had gotten a pretty big dud and was planning on selling it, or just, you know, getting my money back. But I decided to hold on to it and just see if it would take a little bit. And I'm glad I did, it turns out, because ironically, just from sitting, you know, in I think as the weather warmed up and temperatures warmed up, the humidity and whatnot changed, the fretboard itself, or the board itself, has actually expanded. And so the frets aren't nearly as sharp. Like, they're actually, I wouldn't say they're great, but they're decent. That's one of my big pet peeves on guitars is bad fretwork. And so that's something that has allowed me to get past some of the other issues, and I've been continuing to tinker with it. It is holding better tune now, though not great. I still have to do some more work on the nut, and I'm probably actually going to opt out for locking tuners. The bigger kind of issue has also been too, as I'm getting more accustomed to the neck. Look at that neck! Is even still with the more flat radius that the SE does have, it is still a challenge for me to play. For reference, I do tend to prefer a little bit more of a tapered slim neck. Not necessarily super slim, but, you know, comfortably slim. It's not that it's, you know, super ungainly, it's just a little less comfortable than I would typically prefer. Now, in terms of like actual things that I like about this guitar, there's a lot of things. The tonality of the guitar is actually, I think, pretty awesome. There's a lot of, you know, playability, tonal genres wise that you can get out of this guitar. You know, whether it is more of that kind of Mayer, you know, kind of clean, really kind of warmer, round kind of tone, more what you'd associate with a Strat. But as you can even see, like in the video intro that I did here too, it's got a lot of bite that you can kind of get out of it. Single coil spank. Not what you'd expect out of like a humbucker, but I thought it held up pretty good. So I do like that about this guitar. It's fairly versatile. The other thing that I like, even just playability, that drew me to this too, is the typical Paul Reed Smith kind of sculpted out cutaway, more how they kind of bevel out that cutaway. That is super nice just for getting up the neck a little bit further than you normally would on a Strat. I mean, not that you can't get it up on a normal Strat, it's easier. And I have liked that and appreciated about all of my Paul Reed Smiths that I've had in the past. The pickup selector is very stiff, which I really like because, you know, as we all know with like more Strat style guitars, I find it's very easy to flick. I do like how stiff that and how, you know, just stable that kind of feels, which is great. In terms of, you know, tuners, like I said, I don't know if this is truly a tuning issue. I haven't really seen much on the tuners being really that problematic online. And so I really think the tuning stability issues have been from the nut. So I'm going to be kind of addressing the nut. There's a lot of good things to say about this guitar. In fact, while we're here actually, I was not fully expecting how much I was going to actually like what the guitar looks like. On pictures online, the pictures I don't feel like do it justice because I thought it just looked super bland. But that being said, when I got this out of the box, I was actually really pleasantly surprised. It just looks great. I love this color. This is the Storm Gray edition. That is obviously a factor whenever you buy a guitar. It shouldn't be the only factor, as I tell so many of my students and people that I work with, and so many kids are always, and even adults, are always going exactly after what the guitar looks like. You should also care about a whole bunch of other things, obviously, mainly playability and tone. But when a guitar looks good, it looks good, you know, and it's a huge benefit. So that's a huge added plus. We're gonna dive in here again and do some more tone examples on this guitar. I'm gonna take it through each of the pickups so you can kind of hear what each of the pickups sounds like in more of a clean and kind of more dirty kind of settings. And then we'll kind of wrap up with kind of my final thoughts on whether or not if I would still buy this in hindsight. So stay tuned to the end of the video, and let's enjoy some of these tone examples. like I said, this is a pretty versatile guitar. And you can get a lot of bang for buck with this guitar as well, especially if you have longer fingers and are more comfortable with a thicker neck profile. And so I think it could be a great option. That being said, there does seem to be some QC issues. I was literally actually just this last week down the street at a buddy of mine who runs a shop in town here. And I didn't even know this, but he had 2 Silver Skies in the SE range and a third that was the American range as well. And he said he had tons of issues with some tuning and fret ends and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't appear to be that much of a one-off. I think there is some QC issues, which is actually really shocking because I've found, at least from my experience, that PRS has had a really good quality control across most of their guitars that I've seen. You know, obviously there's occasional issues and whatnot, but the majority of the PRSs I've ever played and seen, and I've seen hundreds of them through my studio with students and clients and all of that, the thoughts have been pretty good on that. So I was actually pretty shocked. In terms of whether I would go this route or honestly, you know, the Fender route or another boutique, honestly, I think this is a great guitar, but the Player 2 series, I mean, from Fender, because I know this is going to be what a lot of people are comparing it to. I just got one of the Fender Player 2 series and I was kind of blown away, you know, just with some of the upgrades that they've kind of done to the Player 1, as I've seen so many Player 1s through my studio, so much with students. Between these two, I'd be interested to play the Player 2 Strat, honestly, because the Tele version of the Player 2 just kills this guitar. It's so much more comfortable, and obviously that's factoring in, you know, just how I play it, but not just that, just QC wise. The fret ends are buttery smooth with the rolled edge of the fretboard. On the Player 2, the pickups sound great. It's super comfortable to play just all the way up and down, and there was virtually nothing that I could complain about on that guitar for what it is. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. It's something that I'm sure you could get a bad run with the Player 2 too. So, you know, it's kind of a hit or miss. I think the biggest kind of, you know, learning lesson out here is I'm probably going to be buying less guitars online. I used to not worry about it so much because I really hadn't had any bad experiences buying online. That being said, recently I've had a couple issues with guitars that I've bought online. And so I think I'm going to be, from here on out, probably buying most things, you know, in person that I've actually played the guitar, that specific guitar. Some of you are probably already totally sold on that kind of line of reasoning too. I know a lot of people who are, but, you know, I've bought a lot of stuff online. I've bought a lot of stuff in person. And so I've had good experiences with both, and now some bad recently with both. So just something to, you know, keep in mind. If you do like guitar-related content, please do smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be putting out tons more content for this year. I've got a whole calendar kind of, you know, planned out. I'm also making a move out to Nashville, Tennessee from Spokane, Washington, and the Pacific Northwest this year as well. So we are literally busy with still teaching, you know, almost 100 students every week, and then also making all the move preparations. So stay tuned for that adventure. I will see you in the next video. Single coil spank.